sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Am I the only one who thinks this is totally insane? Rob, we're fighting theological injustice here.
They're not using just weights and measures.
He said we have 50 listeners. I think he's being generous.
Read your Bible as interpreted by experts.
Rob, are you as shocked as I am?
It's nonsense. If you've given any money to this, you need to complain. You ask for your money back.
I don't know about you, but I find this annoying. What up, and shalom. Welcome to the Rob and Caleb Show. My name is Caleb Hegg. And actually, I've given Rob Van Hoff the day off. He asked for a day off from the Rob and Caleb Show, and I gave it to him. That's right. So Rob is not with us. Never fear. I'm here for you. I want to say, first and foremost, what up and shalom to everybody listening. What up and shalom to everybody watching on YouTube. And if you're listening live, I hope you're in the chat room. You can find the chat room at trradio.com. Hover over the broadcast tab. Go down to the Rob and Caleb Show. Once you click on that, you'll find the chat room down in the left-hand corner. Okay. Follow the steps from there. The Rob and Caleb Show is brought to you by TorahResource.com. Go to TorahResource.com and find all sorts of free articles, things to buy, things to get for free. We have all sorts of studies going on, and great things are happening. And actually, I should plug this real quick for anyone who is interested. I think I've convinced all of the main teachers at Torah Resource. I actually shouldn't say that. Okay, so I've convinced Tim Hegg, Rob Van Hoff, and then Gary Springer to create little short devotional videos, which are going to be put up on the website and going to be put up on my YouTube channel. And basically, once a week, each one of those guys is going to give a short little devotional. So 3 times a week, you will be able to find a 10 minutes or less little video on a given subject or topic. And I hope that that's going to start next week. So tune in and check it out either on my YouTube channel or on TorahResource.com. All right. That being said, I should say that Gary Springer is our programmer today, as always. And I believe, even though Mark Randall is out of the state, that he is still working on our chat room and working on our websites. So a big thank you to those guys for helping make the Rob and Caleb Show possible. I know what you're all thinking right now. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what in the world are we going to do on the Rob and Caleb Show without Rob present? Well, never fear, because I have scrambled around looking for a good topic, looking for something that I could do that would be fairly fun for everyone, but still would be interesting. Okay, I think I found it for you all, and so I should say that normally on the Rob and Caleb Show we have a very strict policy about having people on the show. A lot of the time we'll have my dad on the show. We've had guests before, and those have gone well. They've been fun. We've had a lot of people ask to come on this show, and we continue to deny people coming onto this show. And the reason why is just because we don't want the Rob and Caleb Show to become a platform for people to get up and muddy the waters and disagree with us on things. That's what our Facebook is for. That is what our YouTube is for. That you can get on and disagree with us all you want. So, but today I actually have a special treat. I have 2 guests with me today. Not 1, but 2. And so I guess I'll just dive right into it and introduce my guests, and then we'll get to the heart of why I have them on the show. They have co-authored a book together. The book is titled Impossible Love, and it is by Dr. Craig Keener and Dr. Médine Keener. And let me tell you a little bit about them before we actually get into the interview. Dr. Craig Keener has his PhD from Duke University and is a professor of the New Testament at Asbury Theological Seminary. He is especially known for his work as a New Testament scholar on Bible background. His popular level IVP Bible background commentary, New Testament, has sold over 500,000 copies. Dr. Keener was ordained in an African-American denomination, that is the National Baptist Convention, in 1991, and for roughly a decade before moving to Wilmore, was one of the associate ministers at Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church, an African-American church in Philadelphia. Dr. Médine Musunga Keener received her PhD from the University of Paris and is coordinator of family formation at Asbury Theological Seminary. She was a refugee for 18 months in her nation of the Congo, and together Craig and Médine work for ethnic reconciliation in the U.S. and Africa. I want to welcome my guests, Dr. Craig Keener and Dr. Médine Keener. The first thing I actually want to talk to you about, Dr. Craig, is for you. Before we get started, I saw a short video where you described your coming to keep the Sabbath. And so if you wouldn't mind, for our audience, because I know that our audience will enjoy hearing about that, can you talk a little bit about your coming to a belief that you should be keeping the Sabbath?
Sure. Although I should preface it by saying that the way I keep it, I'll do emails on the Sabbath and things like that too. So I have an Orthodox Jewish friend who says, you keep the Sabbath like a Reformed Jew.
Well, you and me both, I think.
But anyway, it's in the Ten Commandments. I mean, it's one of those things that has a death penalty for violation in the Torah. Usually when there's a death penalty for something, it's pretty serious that God really wants you to observe this commandment. But also, I guess for me, it goes back initially to a Seventh-day Adventist who wrote in something to the local newspaper about the Sabbath is on Saturday throughout Scripture. It's never said to be changed in Scripture itself. And then somebody else wrote in from another church, and I'll leave that one anonymous, but he said, no, we're not under the law, therefore the Sabbath is on Sunday, which of course is the kind of argument for which the phrase non sequitur was created. I mean, it just doesn't follow. And as I searched the Scripture, I didn't see anywhere that it was changed. And also I was involved with the Messianic congregation. And so, keeping the Sabbath is a form of cultural identification, but I really got serious about it one day. It actually was an article in Christianity Today about a case for quiet Saturdays many years ago. Actually, it was an old Christianity Today. I was just going through some old ones and realized, wow, it is biblical to keep the Sabbath, and maybe which day it is not as important as that you do it. It was already there in creation. That's what really got my attention. It was in creation before the Torah. So, I observe it Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. But the important thing is, I think the most important thing is that we have a day of rest. And so I was in the middle of my doctoral work, and I thought, I can't really afford this, but I need to do it because it's commanded. And, I had all this stress, but what I found was the Sabbath acted like a circuit breaker. You get all the stress from one week, then, putting on the brakes, that felt stressful, but after a while, I got into it and was able to rest. And the stress from one week didn't carry over to the next week. I did also have to learn how to rest enough to sleep properly at night on the other days of the week, but that's another story. But it was a great discovery for me, and it's really, I think I've been more productive because I'm able to get the rest and the rejuvenation, the renewal that I need.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And so I want to move now. I'm going to tell a very short story myself on how this interview actually kind of formatted in the past week. I met Dr. Craig Keener in the book display at the SBL, at this year's SBL in Atlanta, Georgia. And I had seen him around the ETS and SBL before that. However, my father was holding in his hand one of Dr. Keener's one of the volumes of his massive Acts commentary, which he ended up buying, and my father said, I think that's actually Dr. Craig Keener right there. And so we stopped and we chatted with him. Originally, I wanted to do a interview on Dr. Craig Keener's work on Acts. It's a 4-volume work. It's over 4,000 pages. It is quite a undertaking, not only to do by one person, but also to read by one person. So I'm excited for that. And we actually just received my father just received his copy, and so it's here in the office. I'm sure I will reference it many different times throughout my life. And so thank you for your work on that. However, what caught our attention from the very beginning was the dedication, and so beforehand I had talked to Dr. Craig about doing an interview on Torah Resource Radio. Obviously, our normal interviews are not done during the Rob and Caleb show, but since Rob took the week off, I decided it would be a great time to have him on, and he asked what book it was that I wanted to talk about. And after seeing the dedication to his Acts volume, I realized I wanted to interview him about his new book. And the new book is actually co-authored by his wife, Dr. Médine Keener. And I guess I should give the dedication, read the dedication. To Dr. Médine Masunga Keener, French and history professor, researcher in African and African American women's history, and mentor to her students, former refugee in the Congo, my friend of many years, my colleague, and my beloved wife. So, tell us about the new book that you have co-authored.
Go ahead. This is the problem of having two of us. Which one of us starts?
Okay. I'll make it easier. So, Médine, tell me a little bit about the book itself. What's the name of the book? What's the general gist of the book, and what's the thrust of the book? What's the underlying message of the book?
Okay. As I speak, I think you can add in things that I'm missing. But the title of the book is Impossible Love. It talks about our journey together, how we got together, and how God took us from so many different backgrounds and countries and continents to come together as husband and wife. It talks a little bit about my journey as a war refugee and Craig's journey in his faith. So, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, she said it talks a little bit about the war. The war refugee. Actually, I thought it was the most exciting part of the book. So I had to edit like 45% of the material out to make it short enough. So
No, wait. Dr. Keener, you had to edit something out? After seeing your Acts commentary, I don't know if I believe that. I'm just playing. I'm playing with you. I'm sorry.
They made me make it shorter. So, but I said, no, I'm not going to cut out her war story. So she has blow-by-blow accounts of some of their narrow escapes, because she actually was keeping a journal during that time, including when she was a refugee for a year and a half. And so we could do it blow by blow. And even though I was writing it, those parts are really, I just adjusted the English, they're directly from her war journal. Mm-hmm. And then there's some things I went through too, like getting beaten on the streets, sharing my faith, and
that's
things
exciting.
Like that.
I mean,
but it didn't take as long as a year and a half. I mean, they beat me and then they were done.
Okay, so we're talking a little bit about the Congo and being a war refugee. I understand that you're Dr. Médine. You were a war refugee for 18 months in the Congo. You were not alone. You were with some family members, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
and what war? Give our listeners just a little bit of a background of what war we're talking about. I know that there's been several wars in the Congo, and I know that there was actually the first major war and the second major war were close to each other. What time frame are we talking about?
Okay, just first of all, just a clarification: there are two Congos in Africa. They all face each other. So
that shows that shows my ignorance on all this.
No,
so I
okay.
apologize.
But there was war going on in what we call the Big Congo, or Congo Kinshasa. And there was war going on in my country. It's the smaller Congo. It's Congo Brazzaville. We were colonized by the French, and then Congo Kinshasa was colonized by Belgium. So for us, there was war that started around 1993 and then went until towards the end of the 90s. But in between, it stopped. The war I'm talking about started in 1997. That's the one. So between that time and when our war started, there were time of maybe 2 or 3 years of peace, quote unquote, peace, but with some pockets of violence here and there. And then war came again in 1997 until 2000, until 2000. So. Yeah.
Okay, and now you were a believer at this time, right?
Yes.
Okay, and were you raised in a believing home, or how did you? Okay, so, and that's how you came to faith then.
Yes, I was raised in a Christian home, and my father and mother really talked to us about Jesus, and through their faith, I came to faith in God, accepting God as my personal God instead of being through my parents' faith.
Yeah.
Her parents were first-generation converts. Of course, in her country, the Christian percentage went from like 2% to 89% in about 100 years.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of her parents' generation were first-generation converts. I was converted from atheism. So you can see when you read about the statistics about the decline of faith in the West and the rise of faith in Africa, Christian faith in Africa, we kind of exemplify it, I guess.
And so, Dr. Craig, you came to faith out of atheism. How old were you, and what was that journey for you? How did that come about?
I guess I'd probably said I was an atheist as early as the age of 9. I remember deciding I didn't believe in life after death or just strict naturalism. Everything could be explained without recourse to the hypothesis of a God. I thought I was really ignorant, but that's what I thought. And then around 13, I started reading Plato and realized I didn't agree with his arguments, but he brought up the point about the immortality of the soul, and it really got me thinking about eternity. I wasn't really sure that the soul was immortal, but if it wasn't, if I was just an infinitesimal accident, life had no meaning. And it got me thinking. Anyway, I eventually began praying, God, if you're out there, or any God, if you're out there, please show yourself to me. And realizing that no matter how far my intellect went, it couldn't get me to an infinite God, since I was just finite. And some fundamental Baptists stopped me on the street, and I argued with them for about 45 minutes. Finally, I hit them with what I thought was the ultimate question, because I'd only ever read one chapter in the Bible, and that was Genesis 1. I said, if there's a God, where did the dinosaur bones come from? And they said, the devil put them there. So you ask a stupid question, you get a stupid answer. And, they weren't trained in apologetics, and they definitely were not trained in paleontology, but they did give me the gospel, how to come to faith in Christ, how to be saved from my sin. So I argued with them. As when I heard their answer, I said, okay, I'll see you later. I'm not going to listen to this. And I started walking off, and they gently warned me I would burn in hell forever. This is not normally the recommended way to share your faith with people, but it was the first time I'd actually heard the good news about how to be made right with God. And the Holy Spirit, who'd been at work, really just worked me over. And within a couple hours, I'd been asking for empirical evidence if there was a God, but he gave me the evidence of his presence, and it was so strong that I either had to accept him or reject him. He wasn't going to let me alone until I did one or the other. And I gave in, and because I didn't want to, not have another chance, So that was the beginning of my Christian life. And
did you go back to the men that you were speaking with and tell them that, to the Baptists on the street, or do they have to find out in eternity?
No, a year later, I was able to track them down.
Nice.
And find them, and shared with them that I'd become a believer, and that I also had led 10 other people to the Lord that year.
Wow.
And they were like, wow, you were one person we thought would never get saved. So the Lord knows it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go back to the book. I should say this for our listeners. The book, Impossible Love, is actually not going to be out yet. It's not out yet. It's not going to be out until April of 2016. So the link that I've put in your show notes for everyone who receives our show notes, the link that I put in there, you got to wait. You can't order it right now. It's not out until April. So I actually have not... What's that? You can pre-order. Yes, pre-order the book. So I actually have not read the book. So I'm which is a little bit different for me. Normally, when I'm doing interviews, I try to, read the people's work and that kind of thing. But from the little that I know of your story together, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you met, then you parted ways, but the Lord brought you back together. Can you talk about what happened? How'd you guys originally meet? All those kind of things. Médine, go for it. It's always interesting from a woman's perspective first.
All right. Well, the first time I met Craig, it was at a meeting, InterVarsity Christian Fellowship.
Yeah, university.
And Craig was speaking, and I just raised some questions, and he thought I was really not really nice.
So you disagreed with him.
But after that, we became friends. And I was at Duke University as an exchange student for about 8 months and a half.
And this was before the war, correct?
Yeah, that was before the war.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that, I went back to France where I was studying, and we corresponded. We talked about marriage a little bit. It didn't work out. And I went to Congo, experienced war, and after war, we talked about marriage again. Yeah. And this time it worked. Yeah. So I came to the U.S.
So, but during the war and during your time as a refugee, you still kept some form of contact with Dr. Craig, correct? I mean, I heard his. Go ahead.
During war, I didn't. My last letter got to him before our city was burned. And for 18 months, he didn't know if I was alive or if I was dead, because we were out in the forest, kind of running for our lives, trying to fend for ourselves and so on. So after that amount of time, we got back in touch. Yes.
What was that like for you, Dr. Craig? Yeah, what was that? Describe that time.
Oh, that was my biggest prayer request of all was for her safety at that time. I was always happy to get letters from my dear friend Médine, but then I got this one letter from her. She said, my cousin was just shot dead. My brother and father were nearly shot dead. And the troops, the rumor is that they're going to kill the intellectuals first, or the educated people first. And so, by the time her letter reached me, her town had already been ransacked. And she was in the forest. There was no way I could reach her. And for the next 18 months, that was my biggest prayer every day, was for her safety. In fact, I had a friend who had some contacts in the military in another country, and he said that as a favor to him, he could get them to go in and send in a military attaché force to rescue her. Well, my hopes jumped really high, and then I was like, wait a minute, we don't know where she is.
Exactly.
She's not going to leave without her family. if an attaché force goes in there during the war, some people are going to get killed. Yeah. We're going to lose more people than we're going to help. And, it just was utterly impractical. And I felt the Lord convict me. You were willing to trust in an attaché force, and you're not willing to put your trust in the Lord God of hosts.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I want to talk a little bit more about your time as a refugee, Dr. Médine. It seems like a lot of people in those kind of, trials like that, I have sisters from a war-torn country, and, I know people who have lost faith because of those kind of things. So was there a time you felt that God had abandoned you during that, or were you seeing the hand of God even in such a horrific situation?
I would say both. Towards the middle of the war, well, maybe close to the beginning, something happened to me where that day was, I think, one of the worst days for me. Our group, with my mom, aged dad. My dad had a stroke, so he was paralyzed. We were pushing him in a wheelbarrow. And all the other people, my siblings and niece, nephew, and the cluster of people who stayed with us, we were running, moving from one village to another. And I knew the way, so I was leading them. But as I was walking, I was like, I don't understand, God, where are you? This is happening to us. We haven't done anything. We're not involved in politics, and we don't know why these things are happening to us. And I was thinking to myself, I said, I'm not prideful, but God, I've been serving you. What did I do to deserve this? So I was really, really down. And I was carrying in the back my son, David. I have been abandoned as a wife, and not by Craig. But many women were abandoned in situations like that. So I was like, I did not understand. I didn't understand what was the purpose of this. And all the faith that I had, I felt like I was losing it. I didn't have anything. So as I was going, leading this group of people, I was crying really loudly, sobbing. And because I knew the way, I was ahead of them. And the kids would say, are we there yet? I'm like, okay, you can come. I could turn. They would not see the tears from my eyes, but I can fake a smile and things like that. As I was walking, I was so much into myself that I didn't realize something was happening. I started to hear like someone humming. First of all, I didn't care about it, but then it started to bother me. I was like, we are hungry. It's very hot. We do not even have water. We don't know. When we'll get there. And somebody is really humming. How dare the person do that in a situation like this? So I started to be very upset. But at the same time, I started to focus on the person. I realized the person was not humming. The person was singing. The person was singing a song that we sing at the church, but the words were all coming wrong. And then I realized the person singing was my son in my back. Of course, he was not walking. He was being carried, and he was dancing and singing. I focused on the song, and the song said, we will overcome. We will overcome. With God's strength, we will overcome. For me, it was like an awakening. I stood there and I said, it's true. I don't know if we're going to die or live, but if I die, I want to die in the Lord. Mm-hmm. I want to trust in God. And if we live, I want myself inside me to know that we will overcome wherever this is taking us. So that became for me like a memory place. Even today, when things are really hard, I go back there. So to answer your question, yes, things were hard, and sometimes I lost hope, but God helped us. I realized that there were two routes in front of me. I can either go towards God and just let him help me, or I can go away from God and wallow in bitterness and self-pity, as I saw a lot of people do. So, yeah, that's what happened to me.
So I know that, and I'm gonna come back to you and talk to you a little bit about maybe a story about some of the miracles that you've seen in your life, because I've watched several of your interviews. But I have a question for Craig now. Dr. Craig, you wrote a book in 2011, again, another book, I apologize again that I have not read, and I'm sorry for that, but it's titled Miracles, and I believe that basically you look at different cultures throughout the world, look at miracles up through history and even into today, if I'm not mistaken, and then make the case that the miracles that were happening in the apostolic scriptures or the New Testament were genuine miracles. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes.
Okay. So from a snippet that I grabbed off of the Google description of the book, it says, and I'm quoting here, it says, Keener suggests that many miracle accounts throughout history and from contemporary times are best explained as genuine divine acts, lending credence to the biblical miracle reports. Okay, so my question is this: how much did your wife's life and story influence the writing of that book?
The book actually started as a footnote in my Acts commentary, because some people had said, well, these accounts, when you get to miracle accounts, they have to be legendary because, these things would develop only over the course of generations. And I'm like, we know that's not true. I mean, we know people who have eyewitness accounts of these things. You may not believe that it's a divine action, but you can't deny that people experience these things. And so I was just going to cite a few books that summarized a whole lot of these. And initially I didn't find them, and I was, giving different accounts. And then, the footnote grew and grew, and, now it's 1,100 pages. And if they hadn't hurried up and published it, it would be even longer because I keep getting material. But one thing that was really a turning point for me, I was researching these, getting people's accounts of them. And sometimes I was approaching them with, a bit of scholarly skepticism. I mean, in principle, I believed in miracles, but, I was trying to use the minimalist approach of scholarship, and, somehow it got down inside of me. And so, but then there were these accounts of people being raised from the dead and so on. And, I was approaching them kind of like, how do we know this or that? And Médine had told me about something, but when we went to Congo, she helped me to interview the witness in one of these cases. It was Antoinette Malambe told me about her daughter when she was about 2 years old. She cried out that she was bitten by a snake, and there was no medical help in the village. She got to her daughter. Her daughter wasn't breathing. So since there was no medical help, she strapped the child to her back. She ran to a nearby village where a family friend, Coco Ngoma Moise, was doing ministry. And Coco Moise prayed for the child, and she started breathing again. So I asked, how long was it between the time that you noticed she wasn't breathing and the time that Coco Moise prayed for her? And she had to stop, and she hadn't really thought about it. She had to stop and calculate the distance between the villages roughly. And she said it was about 3 hours. Now, of course, 6 minutes with no oxygen, irreparable brain damage. But Therese, the daughter, is now an adult. She's finished a master's degree. She had no brain damage at all. And this really got to me because this person that was interviewing, Antoinette Malambe, is my mother-in-law. And Therese is my sister-in-law. And not to doubt one's mother-in-law, but we also confirmed the account with Coco Moise, who was the other witness. And so that was kind of a turning point after which I approached the accounts with a lot less skepticism and a lot more confidence, as there were other people that I knew and trusted who had accounts like this. I mean, that's besides the medical documentation in some of the cases in the West where we have more of that, but eyewitnesses that I knew and trusted.
So, but it started as a footnote. But now I know that you went to the Congo. Was it specifically for this book that you and your wife went to the Congo? Back to the Congo, I should say, for her.
It was one thing we were doing when we were in Congo, but actually we went back because at that point because Medine's father was ill.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's it like, Dr. Médine? What's it like to go back to the Congo now? Now that you've experienced a war in that land, and is it still feel like home, or is there is it uneasy to go back?
Oh no, it feels like home.
Mm.
My family is there, and it just brings back good memories, not memories of war, but memories of before war, of my childhood, me being a youth, and so on. But it's also sometimes uneasy, especially when I'm walking in the street and I'm surrounded by a lot of military. For me, when I am in the Congo, a soldier or somebody in the military always evokes ideas and thoughts of feelings of fear because of what went through war. So I guess I have mixed feelings when I go back home, but the feelings of joy, they are always above the fear and so on.
And for you, Dr. Craig, what was the first time that you went to the Congo? Was it after you were married?
Yes.
And what was that experience like to go to the Congo for the first time and see? You've heard these stories from your wife now, and now you're going and seeing the places and the people that she's told you about. What was that like?
I've spent about a year in Africa altogether, but it was mainly in other parts of Africa, and it was really really precious after hearing her stories to be able to see the sights, and I could see, oh, that's how this fits together, and so on. There's an ancient Greek historian named Polybius who said historians should always go see the sites that they write about so they can see how things fit together. Well, in this case, at least, it turned out that was good advice because she had told me about where a bullet had been fired from and went through their window and into their father's chair right after he'd gotten up out of it. This was before they fled. And, I could see the place where it had been fired from. I could see the ruins of the house. Their house was completely destroyed. When I say completely, unusable. Just some of the walls are still there. But yeah, and to be able to see the places where different things happened and be with the family also, and they're chiming in, as I'm saying, oh, this is the place where this happened, and they're giving me more details about it. And so, as I said, we had more than enough material for the book. I had to actually edit a lot out.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Médine, we've talked about miracles. Now we've talked about the writing of Dr. Craig's book on miracles, him seeing your home. So, is there when you think about miracles in your own life and some of the things that you've seen, some of the things that you've gone through, is there any one or two specific things that come to your mind in terms of stories or miracles that you've seen that that's what sticks in the mind?
Okay, I'll give you two.
Okay.
Not personal ones, but I can talk about my dad. My dad had a disease, like his mouth will have sores all over. Sometimes he have to go to the hospital because he couldn't swallow, he couldn't eat. And he prayed for so long for God to heal him. My dad had the gift of healing. He will pray for someone and the person will be healed. But he prayed for himself for so long, he was not healed. After he would take medicine, he'll be okay for 6 months or a year, and then it will come back. And then one day he walked into a friend of ours, Ma Suzanne, and Ma Suzanne said, "Oh, Papa Jacques, why didn't you tell me that you have this terrible disease?" And I said, "Oh, it's okay. It comes and goes." She said, "No, we need to pray about it." So
the Lord had revealed it to her in a dream.
She said, "I had a dream and this is what I saw." So she prayed for my dad, and he didn't think anything about it because he had the beginning of the sores. And after a week, he realized that he didn't have any sores. And he never had sores until he went to heaven. He was completely healed and didn't need any medicine. The other story is just David during war. Children got sick a lot. David was very sick. His ears, I mean, you can see pus coming from his ears. I used to be afraid, just saying, this child would not hear anymore. But that was not the problem. When David was born, he had some type, I don't know what happened, but his eyes, they would be like white stuff coming out of his eyes, pus. And the doctor said, well, you know what? This child would need medicine for all his life. And then working. I didn't have money to buy any medicine, and we tried so many different things. We just let it go. My sister one day mixed some, whatever she found, this leaf and that leaf, and prayed and put it on David's eye. And then we forgot about it. But as we went through war, David's eyes were clear, and he never had any pus. And David is 20. I mean, he's 18. 18. Wow, he will be like, Mom. David is 18. I mean, he wears glasses like all of us, but he doesn't. The Lord completely healed him from that disease. So, yeah.
When I throw things in, keep in mind, Médine knows 5 languages. So sometimes. But do you want to tell about your brother's Emmanuel's escape in the car, or do you want me to tell it? Or
okay, that's fine.
She had been really sick with malaria, and they were able to get just one person out, and so this was in Brazzaville, the first time she had to escape war. It was before it came to their hometown, and she was very sick. That's when she was pregnant with David. The guy who abandoned her turned out that he was actually a bigamist, so they weren't even. But anyway, she didn't know all that at that point. But she was. They went to the airport, and it turned out that there were no seats left on the last flight out of Brazzaville, and they knew that it would be really hard to flee with her that sick. But the Lord made it so that she was able to get on that flight. But meanwhile, her brother was driving one of the 2 empty cars back from the airport, and the guy in front said, "Don't lose me, or you're dead," because he was the only one who knew the passwords for both sides of the war. And so when they were on this boulevard, there's shooting from both sides of the boulevard, and the car that he's driving stalls in the middle of the road. And the other guy he had to drive on because he didn't want to get shot either. So here's Emmanuel in the middle of the road, turning the key in the ignition over and over and just praying, Lord, please make this car start. And finally it started. But now he has another problem. He gets to all the checkpoints and he doesn't know the password. But apparently the guy had gone out in the head and, said what was coming, and so they waved him through. So he's a professor now. He's doing well. Wow. But there were a lot of close calls. And by the way, that car never ran again.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Craig, your normal books, I know we've talked a little bit about you editing this work now that you co-authored and whatnot, but your normal works are obviously more of a scholarly nature, a lot of footnotes, commentaries, those kind of things. And this book seems to have a different tone to it, obviously, and for good reason. What was it like? What was the difference between your normal writing style, writing for an academic, scholarly world, and now shifting gears a little bit? Did you like it more? Did you like it less? Was it just a completely different experience? Talk about that just a little bit.
I think I liked it. Maybe I liked it more. I was able to share more of my heart. On the other hand, I've written both popular level works, that are, well, like the Bible background commentary is on a more popular level, not so much of a scholarly level. And while the first time I wrote it, it was all right. When I went back and revised it, and I was working on, there's going to be a study Bible called the Cultural Background Study Bible. When I was working on that, it seemed to me kind of tedious because I had all this information and I just had to just summarize it, and I couldn't put in the documentation and so on. And I realized I really like writing the scholarly stuff. I like doing something that hasn't been done before. I don't like just doing what's already been done. I don't want to write something that just competes with what somebody else has done well enough. Just use what's already there. Life is too short to waste it, but invest it for the kingdom. And that's why I did the 4-volume Acts commentary. I had all this information that had never been published before, so I wanted to make it available. It's different when I preach. I can just, I want to connect it with where people are at. But when I'm writing something, I don't like duplicating what's already there. I like doing the documentation and so on, especially for commentaries. I'm not the most organized person, and commentaries are great because I don't have to figure out how to organize it. I just follow the text.
Yeah. Okay, so I know that you guys work together. Both of you work together on certain things. I know that you both work at the same seminary together. And so talk a little bit about the current work that you do. I know that you, I'll just let you go for it. Talk about the current work that you do and kind of some of the stuff that you do together.
You could tell about your work in the seminary.
Yeah, at the seminary, I work in a department that's called community formation. So basically, we work with the students when they come to the seminary. We go from getting in touch with them before they even come to welcoming them, helping them settle, and visiting them in case there is sickness, disease, births. I also help with a small group of, it's called ESL, where we have all the international spouses who come. The ESL is mainly for women because I don't have men to do it. But they come, and a lot of them know English intellectually, but it's hard to speak. So we come together, American women and international women. We work with that. We do a lot of things like sending off of students. We are more involved with the student lives. Basically, yeah, that's what I do here.
They help nurture the families. So it's not just the student who's in the program, but and then the families get neglected. But here at Asbury, there's an emphasis on nurturing the families too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And Dr. Craig, you just finished a massive work on Acts. You co-authored a book with your wife. Are you working on more books now? I know that you've put out about 17, 18 books as it is, but are you working on more books now, or are you just focusing on teaching?
No, I enjoy teaching, but one book I'm actually in the process of indexing it now. It's called The Mind of the Spirit. It's on Paul's emphasis on thinking, like the mind of Christ, renewing the mind of the Spirit versus the mind of the flesh, or the mindset of the flesh, the corrupted mind, and so on, just dealing with those kinds of issues in Paul's letters, and comparing how those themes were treated, in contrasting often how those themes were treated in Stoic philosophy and other ideas that were current in that day. What's distinctive in Paul's treatment of that. And then also I mentioned I wrote most of the New Testament notes for the Cultural Background Study Bible that's due out later in 2016, and also Impossible Love is due out in 2016. And there's another book called Spirit Hermeneutics that might be out in 2016. I was asked to do that one. I thought that one would be really quick, and it took me a long time. But that one was, they wanted me to write something on Pentecostal hermeneutics. I'm actually not ordained as a Pentecostal, but experienced. Well, here's the irony. Médine has all the stories about the raisings from the dead and stuff. She's a mainstream evangelical from Congo, but I'm ordained in a non-Pentecostal denomination, but I'm experientially Pentecostal. I pray in tongues and so on. I hope, anyway, you can edit that out if you're not allowed to talk about that. But
No.
Anyway, but I was asked to write the book, and I thought about it, and I said, I don't think the hermeneutic or the interpretive approach needs to be distinctive for that. I think, we just need to be biblically faithful. And yet there is something that the Pentecostal movement has taught much of the church about relying on the Spirit. It's not that nobody talked about that before, but it's become a much more pervasive emphasis in the last century. And trying to see how the Spirit makes a difference, or should make a difference, in how we read Scripture. And exploring that led me into, including seeing how Yeshua, how Jesus and Paul and others in the New Testament interpret the Old Testament, how they apply the law, and so on. And it, I'd emphasized a lot. I taught biblical interpretation a lot and taught about the importance of background and context and, the basic things. And then figured, okay, I'm handing them off to the homiletics professor. Let the preaching professor take them from there, or the spiritual formation professor take them from there. And didn't go teach them about the stuff that I go on with in my own devotional life, where I want to hear the Spirit in the text in terms of how it applies to my life, or how it applies to other people's lives. I mean, you do the exegesis first. Don't dispense with that. That's a mistake I think too many people make in the name of the Spirit, and they come up with things often contrary to what the Spirit inspired the authors to say to begin with. But we don't just stop with the exegesis and have a mental understanding of the text. We need to submit our lives to it. And anyway, so that's what that book's about. And then I'm going to be writing a commentary on Galatians for Cambridge, and have some other projects in process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Always busy.
Always busy, no doubt. Okay, so before we're coming to the end of our time, but is there anything else that you'd like to talk about in terms of the book Impossible Love before we go, or even just your work? I know that you guys are heading off to India, I believe, soon. Is that true?
He is.
Well, I'm waiting to see if I got the visa or not, but we'll see.
And then also, at some points, I know our listeners would love to hear some questions answered on your commentary on Acts. Of course, it's going to take a little while to, I can open it up and start asking questions right away, but that is for a completely different interview, because I'm sure that we could fill an hour without any problem talking about your commentary on Acts. But so before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to say about Impossible Love, or just in general?
In the book Impossible Love, things that I really have felt burning in my heart over the years that the Lord showed me in my life, that were meant not just for me, but lessons that could be shared with the church, that didn't, a commentary isn't really quite the right place to share that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But as we're narrating our experience, I could share some of those times as they were part of the experience. And but I guess one of the deepest things we learned through the experience that we went together in the book is the faithfulness of God. Sometimes even in the midst of our lack of faith, how faithful God is. The end of the message of the hiding place, what Betsy Ten Boom said, there's no pit that God is not deeper still. And we've just seen God's faithfulness over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just add that bad things happen. Yeah. God didn't send war to Congo. Man did. But in the midst of that, God was real and faithful and good to us. He provided in amazing ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I look back, I don't think I would trade that. No. He blessed us. even though it was hard. So, yeah.
I want to thank both my guests, Dr. Craig Keener and Dr. Médine Keener. And thank you so much for the work that you both are doing for the kingdom and for the work that you've put out. And we hope that the impossible love will not only further the kingdom, but will glorify our great God and Savior, Yeshua, the Messiah.
Yes.